Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in the John Wooden Room here in the bowels of Mackey Arena. The lights are off out on the floor, so I had to make other arrangements for our wrap video here following Purdue's 96-52 win over Wright State, so you'll have to excuse the beam of light that's cutting off my ear here like a laser beam, and whatever tantrums Fran McCaffrey might throw on the TV behind me. I have moved off to the side here a little bit to get Iowa out of the background. Don't want to violate any copyrights here. This is your wrap video again following Purdue's win over Wright State. It's brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Union Club Hotel and the 811 restaurant. We will dive right into it here. Obviously, Purdue's last tune-up game before the heavy stuff really starts coming down this weekend when Purdue goes to Connecticut to face North Carolina and then either Villanova or Tennessee. Obviously, Purdue's first proving ground of the season. Games that really matter early on because seeding is, the most important part of this portion of the year for Purdue. Every game matters in that regard, obviously, and that's what this season's all about, is not how many games you won or this or that. It's about the number next to your name come March, because this is obviously a team that has every reason in the world to feel pretty good about its chances to do something meaningful come March. And North Carolina, Villanova, Tennessee, whoever that second game is, those are some of the games that are going to obviously really either help or not so, I don't want to say hurt, but those are the sorts of games that can really help your resume or go down as missed opportunities to really enhance your stock come Selection Sunday. I think Purdue has every reason in the world here after 3 games to feel pretty good about itself. I think obviously you have seen a team with the makings of an offensive powerhouse, a potentially elite offensive team with a very unique blend of weapons. A few guys who are really kind of coming of age here, but also enough of a offensive floor here to, I think, be pretty good even when they're not good. And I think that, their ability to get to the foul line, I think, can really, really help them weather some storms down the line when those inevitable offensive struggles come. I think the offensive rebounding thing is a big, big deal. The ability to generate offense off the offensive glass and to turn your own misses into positives and to, proverbially sort of break a defense's back. I can't believe I just said proverbially, and I can't even repeat it because it was so nonsensical. It was like an NFT. It was one of its own. It was one of a kind. There will never be another pronunciation of that word. I hope you got that on video because that is an NFT. You can make millions. Anyway, let's talk about Purdue's offensive floor. I think that the offensive rebounding thing is a big, big deal. The ability to get to the foul line, I think, is a big, big deal. And I think these are things that, again, when things might not be working, when people have gummed up the post or whatever it may be, and Purdue inevitably doesn't shoot great, I think there's going to be a baseline of productivity there that can help Purdue weather some storms. We will wait and see till when Purdue actually gets pushed, but I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world. And this sounds counterintuitive, but I think this is really something that holds water. It would not have been the worst thing in the world for Purdue in one of these games to just shoot like hell, just to go 5 of 25 or something like that, just to make them have to play through it, just to make them have to really hunker down, for lack of a better term, and guard and win games outside of just being able to kind of win track meets and outscore people. This is a team with a really formidable mix offensively, but what they have to do is they have to continue to commit themselves to getting better defensively as well, and not just bank on outscoring everyone, because pretty soon here you're going to have to win games 70-63 and not 96-50. And when those games come around, that's when I think you're really going to find out a lot about Purdue. There's no red flags there whatsoever. I think they're getting better defensively. I thought the first half today was the best they've looked. I do think Wright State got some okay shots against them and just didn't make them. But I think by and large that was the best defensive half Purdue's played of the season. Now, they've really only played 3 competitive halves here, counting the first halves of these first 3 games, but I do think that was Purdue's best defensive half. I think they're getting better. I do think that they have decent pieces from a defensive perspective. but they still have to keep getting better. They have to be a better defensive team than they were last year, I think, to win the sorts of games that I think you're going to need to win this year to win a Big Ten championship, to get a number 1 or a number 2 seed, something like that, and then certainly to win in March. So that's going to be a continued process all throughout the season, but I think tonight represented a little bit of a step forward, as the Indiana State game represented a little bit of a step forward from the Bellarmine game, which represented a little bit of a step forward probably from the Providence scrimmage, and so on and so forth. So if baby steps are the best you can hope for, baby steps it is. But I do think this team has a hell of a lot going for it. And, it does start with those 2 centers. This is this is essentially a college basketball unicorn. I was going to say anomaly, but that's complete nonsense. And I've already filled my nonsense quota for this video with the whatever it was I said before. Zach Edey and Travion Williams are both outstanding college basketball players, obviously. And, between the two of them today, you get 16 of, is that right? That's not right. Oh, yeah, 16 to 23 from the floor, 38 points between them. Their per 40 minutes this season are going to be through the roof. Not that matters all that much, but when you look at the combination thereof, you're going to end up with like Shaq numbers between the two of them. And I think both guys are going to be able to do a better job, or a good enough job, weaponizing the attention against them. In the best case scenario, not turning the ball over as much as maybe they have at times against these smaller teams that have to just throw the kitchen sink at them. I do think both of those guys get a little bit better, too, when they start going up against other big guys. I know that sounds like nonsense, because when you start facing credible big guys, those guys tend to be pretty good because they're going to be playing for North Carolina, or they're going to be Kofi Coburn, or they're going to be Hunter Dickinson or whatever. But I think when you get to play one-on-one against a guy who's your size, I think oftentimes that can be a little bit easier than having to deal with the guys who have their arms wrapped around each leg and kind of things like that, and knowing there's like a 6'3" dude just standing behind you in the post. You probably don't have to think quite as much, because when you do that stuff, you kind of have to have your next move planned, all your contingencies covered, things like that. It's probably a little easier to play that way, a little simpler to play that way, and probably a little bit of a relief to not have to deal with 3 or 4 guys guarding you at all times. And that's not to say that Big Ten opponents won't do some of that stuff, just there will be games where things are a little bit more traditional. And I think that might help these guys even more a little bit. Not that they need any help, because they're both outstanding players. And that brings us to one of those players, Travion Williams. I thought he was outstanding tonight. Obviously, if you watched the game, you saw it. He was as good as he was at any time last year. Obviously, this was not the highest caliber of competition tonight relative to the people he did it against last year, Michigan State, Ohio State, whoever it might have been. But, it's an interesting deal with Travion Williams, because obviously he's becoming sort of the face of the uniqueness of this Purdue team, that you have a guy who was an All-American and a first-team All-Big Ten player last year who's now coming off the bench. And there's something in him right now that's coming out that I can't quite put my finger on. I think he's genuine about what he's saying, but he seems to be relishing the opportunity to talk like a veteran, talk like he's one of this team's, sort of cool but wise uncles, like he's one of the older guys in this team, and like he's been through it all. He talks a good game about winning and, what's really important at this stage of your career, and helping the younger guys, and, going out of his way at times to kind of praise the coaches and Purdue's culture and things like that. He might just be talking a good game, but I don't think so. I think he's genuinely, that's what's in his heart right now. And I think that's a really unique story. In terms of, him coming off the bench behind Zach Edey, I'm sure that wasn't his preferred scenario when, he started out his career and realized he was going to be a pretty good player. I don't know if he would have seen this coming last year, when he was making so many big plays for Purdue all last season, getting a lot of postseason honors, things like that. But he was here all summer with Zach Edey. He was on the business end a lot of what Zach Edey did this summer to put himself in the position he's put himself in. And I'm sure on some level he gets it and understands it. but he has played really well. He has played hard. He seems as engaged as he's ever been. He looks like he's trying defensively. That's never going to be his thing, but he is trying, and he does seem like he's doing all the right things right now, and that's an immense credit to him, because a lot of guys in his situation would be pissed. They would be upset and all of that stuff, and no one in their right mind could blame them, because this can't be an easy situation. So major credit to him for the way he's playing, but he and Zach Edey together are sort of, I don't want to call them co-starters, because obviously Zach Edey might be a great player, like a great player here this season. But it's going to be interesting to see, who finishes the games sometimes. It might be kind of a hot hand situation, might depend on how Trevion Williams is done at the foul line, kind of things like that. But Purdue has two unbelievable centers, and it's an unbelievable wealth of riches that this team has. I think, you look at what they did offensively in this game. I didn't think Jaden Ivey played terribly well. And when you have a guy that influential who can play a so-so game, I thought he forced some things a little bit through the first half. But when you have a guy that good and that influential who can play a so-so game and you still score 96 points, that's a pretty good deal. That speaks to the volume of weapons you have, the avenues for offense you have, and so on and so forth. I thought Eric Hunter played well tonight, and that's important. Everything I just talked about with Trevion Williams kind of applies to Eric Hunter now too, because this probably wasn't his plan coming into his senior year to be coming off the bench here, but he has every opportunity to play himself back into a certain status on this team, and I thought he did a pretty good job tonight. Seemed to play hard, seemed to guard hard, did a nice job as a facilitator, especially early on. Seemed like he's trending upward as well. So this team's got a lot of players. I don't know if you have noticed that or not. But one kind of final thought on this game tonight was that Purdue had 17 turnovers. The actual number is 14 because 3 of those came in the final minute or two. When the walk-ons were on the floor. So I'm not counting those. But I did think early on that, Purdue was a little loose with the ball. They were a little casual, kind of things like that. And that's one thing I think this team still has to be hypersensitive about, that no matter how formidable you are offensively, no matter how easily scoring might come to you relative to how it normally comes, you still got to be hyper aware of the turnover issue, because frittering away possessions against good teams will come back to haunt you eventually, and frittering away possessions against anyone will affect your defense. And this has to be a good enough defensive team, obviously, to get the sort of high leverage stops that you're going to have to get to win the level of game you need to win to have the sort of season you want to have. That is a really, really complex sentence that I just pulled off, and I hope it was coherent. And I'm not even going to watch it to find out, because I'm horrified at what just came out of my mouth. But Purdue has to be very good on defense. They have to be able to win games at the end on defense. And, part of defensive improvement is being able to, have all 5 of your guys dialed in on what's coming at them. And when you turn the ball over, that compromises you, and it's something they've got to be, again, hyper aware of, and really, really limit the turnovers. And that comes down to everybody. That comes down to the big guys, not setting bad screens. It comes down to the big guys not handling double teams well, things like that. It comes down to Jaden Ivey making really good decisions and not, being over-aggressive at times, which any scorer of his caliber is vulnerable to. That's just the nature of that sort of player. When you have a flamethrower that you're kind of wielding around, eventually some other collateral damage is going to take hold. It's just a mess at this point. I'm the flamethrower right now. I'm just burning everything in my path with these nonsensical things that come out of my mouth. I tweeted tonight something about Purdue was picking offensive rebounds off the glass like apples off a tree. I don't know. not having time to sit back and think about things before you type them or say them just really comes back and burns you in this new age media landscape that we're in. So I apologize for whatever stupid dad joke sorts of things I tweet and I write and I say, but I can't help it. I just can't help it. I'm corny. So look, I'm done talking. I have nothing else here for my co-host behind me, John Wooden, for Fran McCaffrey. This is Brian Neubert from GoldenBlack.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however you process our materials. And I will talk to you again this weekend from the Mohegan Sun. I will be at the blackjack table to do this rap video after Purdue plays North Carolina, its first really, really meaningful game of the season, and one that will be, I'm sure, something that provides me lots of things to give you nonsensical analogies regarding. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again this weekend. Take care.